Imagine finally escaping the orphanage with your life savings, only to lose every single penny because a talking demonic sword decided you were its new owner. And somehow, that's still not the worst thing that happens to him. In a world where mysterious portals have become such a normal sight that nobody even bothers looking at them anymore, monsters are just another part of reality. To deal with those threats, humanity relies on powerful, awakened, superhuman fighters blessed with magical abilities that ordinary people could only dream of. Right in the middle of that world lives Yoon Gaeon, a young man who has finally reached adulthood and moved out of the orphanage. He is beyond excited to start living on his own. Thanks to years of carefully saving every bit of his government support money and a special matching savings program the orphanage director recommended, his account has grown into more than 31 million won, enough to rent a home and comfortably search for a job without worrying about money. Everything is finally going his way. Or at least, that's what he thinks. Standing inside the bank, Gaon happily asks the teller to transfer the money for his apartment deposit and open a new high-interest savings account. He is already planning out his peaceful future. Then the front doors explode open. A masked robber storms inside, waving a sword and announcing a bank robbery. Everyone freezes in disbelief. The customers immediately raise their hands while Gon can only watch his dream life crumble before his eyes. The robber threatens to kill anyone who moves. A security guard quickly pulls out his revolver and orders the criminal to surrender. Instead of panicking, the robber confidently spins his sword at incredible speed before striking a dramatic battle pose, almost daring the guard to shoot. The customers immediately realize something terrifying. That man might actually be an awakened. More than a decade earlier, mysterious dimensional rifts had begun appearing all across Earth, bringing horrifying monsters with them. Humanity survived only because certain people awakened supernatural abilities, becoming powerful warriors capable of fighting those creatures. Since then, awakened have become the world's greatest protectors, and sometimes its biggest threats. Remembering the rumors that awakened can slice bullets out of the air, everyone braces for disaster. The guard fires anyway. The robber flashes a confident grin and swings his sword. One perfectly timed slash cuts the guard's revolver clean in half. Unfortunately for him, bullets travel a whole lot faster than his ego. The round flies straight past the broken gun and smacks him right between the eyes. The would-be superhuman robber collapses instantly. The entire bank falls silent. Gaon cannot even process what he just witnessed. Somebody clearly lied about swordsmanship beating modern firearms. But before anyone can relax, the fallen criminal's sword suddenly begins glowing with an eerie purple light. The crimson jewel embedded in its hilt pulses as an unsettling voice echoes throughout the bank. The sword starts talking. It mocks its former owner for being pathetic before tempting everyone nearby with promises of limitless power. All they have to do is pick it up. Some people begin losing themselves almost immediately. One elderly woman becomes completely obsessed with grabbing the weapon just so she can finally beat some sense into her husband. Honestly, that poor old man has no idea how close he just came to disaster. Panic spreads throughout the bank. Parents shield their children. People desperately fight against the strange temptation. Meanwhile, Gaon quietly kneels near the back of the room. Then, he slowly stands up. Purple light fills his eyes as he mutters one thing: his money. While everyone believes the cursed sword has completely brainwashed him, Gaon suddenly sprints across the bank like his life depends on it. Customers desperately try to stop him, but he slips around every person with unbelievable agility. Even the security guard throws himself into Gaon's path. That lasts about half a second. Gaon slides straight between the guard's legs, dives across the floor, and grabs the cursed sword before anyone can stop him. Dark purple energy immediately engulfs his body. The sword laughs triumphantly as the crimson gem blazes with light, officially forming a contract with its brand new owner. Everyone watching assumes the poor kid has just sacrificed his mind. But moments later, the sinister aura completely disappears. The guard cautiously approaches and asks if Gaon is all right. Instead of answering, Gaon's consciousness is dragged into a strange mental world where a gigantic flaming eye greets him as its newest host. The ancient entity explains the rules of their contract. In exchange for overwhelming power, Gaon must sacrifice the most precious thing he owns. The spirit tempts him with promises of limitless strength, enough to rule over everyone and never be looked down on again. Gaon calmly says he accepts. The contract begins. Back in reality, the guard watches as Gaon suddenly grips the sword and silently rises to his feet. The atmosphere inside the bank becomes unbelievably tense. Then Gaon suddenly takes off running. Customers scream as he races through the building carrying the cursed weapon. Is he about to massacre everyone? Not even close. He charges straight to the customer service desk and slams his savings passbook onto the counter. The confused teller processes the transaction. Transfer complete. The cursed spirit is left completely speechless. Instead of sacrificing his soul, instead of sacrificing his life, Gaon sacrificed every penny in his savings account. 31 million won. The contract actually accepts human money as payment. Even the legendary cursed sword cannot believe it just got bought for cash. The furious spirit, named Hukryo, throws an absolute tantrum after realizing centuries of evil have been exchanged for what basically amounts to a bank transfer. Gaon immediately asks where his promised power is. Before the sword can answer, heavy footsteps echo through the bank. A blue-haired woman walks inside wearing an official government badge. She introduces herself as Kang Chunhua from the Hunter Special Task Force and immediately orders Gaon to surrender. Knowing these agents have a reputation for eliminating dangerous threats without hesitation, Gaon instantly throws the sword away. Unfortunately, the sword flies right back into his hand. He throws it again. It comes back. Again. It comes back. The cursed contract has permanently soul-bound the weapon to him. Thinking he is refusing to cooperate, Chunhua activates the massive energy cannon built into her mechanical arm. Blue electricity crackles around the weapon as enough destructive power gathers to erase Gaon from existence. Completely terrified, Gaon desperately explains that he is trying to get rid of the sword. The cursed blade only laughs inside his head, demanding blood while encouraging him to start killing everyone. Seeing absolutely no other option, Gaon immediately surrenders. Some time later, he finds himself sitting inside an interrogation room across from Park Do-kyung, the leader of the Hunter Special Task Force. Thankfully, security footage proves Gaon is nothing more than an unlucky civilian. Do-kyung explains that Hukryo is a cursed demonic weapon born from a dimensional rift. It constantly corrupts its owner and hypnotizes nearby people. Since the weapon has already formed a soul contract, removing it is nearly impossible. Fortunately, the sword appears to be only E rank, the absolute weakest grade of cursed artifact. Hukryo absolutely loses its mind after hearing itself called low tier. Gaon suddenly realizes something even more embarrassing. Out of everyone inside the bank, he was literally the only person stupid enough to pick up the cursed sword. His biggest concern, however, is not the curse. It is his money. When he asks if his savings can be recovered, Do-kyung delivers the worst possible news. The contract cannot be reversed. His entire fortune has already been officially donated back to the orphanage. Trying to undo the pact could seriously damage his body. After accepting that his life savings are gone forever, Gaon reluctantly leaves with his new unwanted companion. Meanwhile, Chunhua questions whether releasing someone carrying a cursed weapon is really a good idea. Do-kyung quietly reveals the cursed ring permanently attached to his own finger, proving he understands Gaon's situation better than anyone. After struggling against the ring's own corrupting influence, he explains that soul-bound cursed items simply cannot be removed. Still, Gaon's behavior bothers him. Instead of embracing the sword's promises of power, the young man repeatedly tried to throw it away. Even stranger, the contract accepted ordinary money as payment. Because of those impossible events, Do-kyung decides to simply monitor Gaon instead of treating him as a criminal. Completely unaware he is now under government surveillance, Gaon stops by a convenience store hoping to buy a cup of instant ramen. The cashier immediately notices the massive sword in his hand and quietly starts questioning every career choice that led to this moment. Then, reality hits even harder. His credit card is declined. Every last cent really is gone. Gaon begins screaming at Hukryo while the terrified cashier assumes the armed lunatic has finally snapped. Before things can calm down, The same possessed old woman from the bank suddenly bursts into the store demanding that the sword finally give her enough power to beat her husband. The cashier immediately hides behind the counter and calls the police. Moments later, an officer rushes inside, searching for a missing elderly woman. Instead, he finds Gaon standing in the middle of the candy aisle holding a cursed sword while wrestling an old lady. The officer instantly points his gun and orders the apparent kidnapper to surrender. Gaon desperately insists this is all one massive misunderstanding. Unfortunately, the old woman keeps screaming for power, the cursed sword keeps demanding violence, and in the end, the blue-haired hunter has to show up once again to clean up yet another unbelievable mess caused by the unluckiest man alive. A full week passes, and Yoon Gaon has already become a walking disaster. Dark circles hang under his eyes as he drags himself through the streets with the cursed sword strapped to his waist. Every passerby stares at him like he is some kind of psychopath. Whispers follow him everywhere, and every judgmental look only makes him hate the sword even more. To understand why he looks completely broken, the story flashes back to his week of job hunting. His very first interview ends before it even begins. The recruiters hear the loud metallic clanging of a sword before Gaon even opens the door. He steps inside, introduces himself with a nervous smile, and proudly says he is ready to dedicate his life to the company. Unfortunately, nobody notices his enthusiasm. All they see is a guy carrying a massive sword into an office. Rejected. His next attempt at a warehouse job goes just as badly. Carrying a deadly weapon around heavy equipment is apparently a terrible idea. Rejected. Then he tries retail. Rejected. He even lands a waiter job for about 5 minutes before the sword keeps smashing dishes and knocking things over. Fired. After getting rejected over and over again, Gaon realizes the obvious solution: hide the sword. At his next interview, he carefully leaves the weapon behind and walks in with perfect manners. The interviewer immediately likes him. The man compliments his respectful attitude and hires him on the spot. Finally, after an entire week of humiliation, things are looking up. The interviewer smiles and reaches out for a handshake. Gaon happily reaches forward with both hands. Then the cursed sword suddenly shoots across the room like a guided missile and lands straight in his hand. Instead of shaking hands, he accidentally points a sword directly at his new boss's throat. The poor interviewer goes from welcoming smile to absolute terror in less than a second. Security is called. Another rejection. Back in the present, Gaon stands on the sidewalk glaring at the sword with pure hatred before throwing it as far away as he possibly can. A few seconds later. Clang. The sword quietly lands right back in his hand. That is the final straw. Completely defeated, Gaon drops to his knees and starts crying, begging the cursed weapon to just leave him alone. Hukryo refuses. Instead, the sword insists that it is finally time for its master to embrace evil, gather bad karma, and unleash his darkest desires. Gaon argues that he has absolutely no interest in becoming a villain. Suddenly, an unbearable headache hits him. Dark smoke begins wrapping around his body while one of his eyes glows an ominous crimson. The sword laughs triumphantly, convinced its corruption is finally taking over. Gaon slowly stands up, wearing an unsettling smile. Hukryo celebrates. At last, its master has embraced darkness. Then Gaon reaches into his pocket, pulls out 3 protein bars, tears all of them open at once, and stuffs every single one into his mouth. The sword freezes. It has absolutely no idea what is happening. Chewing like a starving animal, Gaon proudly declares that the packaging clearly recommended eating only 1 bar per meal. He just ate 3. He has officially broken the rules. Then he crumples the wrappers and dramatically throws them onto the ground inside a children's playground. The sword watches in complete disbelief. Gaon raises the cursed blade toward the sky and proudly announces that now that he owns a demonic sword, he no longer needs to suppress his evil impulses. His first act of villainy: littering. Hukryo cannot believe this is the criminal mastermind it was paired with. A few seconds later, the corruption fades. Gaon stares at the candy wrappers in horror. He actually littered. With tears in his eyes, he accuses the sword of corrupting his pure heart before immediately picking up every wrapper and throwing them into the proper trash bin. His conscience is finally clear. Unfortunately, the moment he tries to undo his evil deed, thick purple smoke erupts around him. Du Kyung's warning was true. Trying to reverse the contract comes with consequences. The ground beneath Gaon suddenly opens into a swirling black void that swallows him whole. He jolts awake inside his apartment, gasping for air. At first, everything seems normal. Then he notices the floor is burning hot. His air conditioner has been running full blast for hours, while the windows have been left completely open. Just imagining the upcoming electricity bill nearly gives him another heart attack. As memories slowly return, Gaon realizes something horrifying. While trying to resist the curse, he unknowingly committed several tiny acts of selfishness. He gave someone directions without personally walking them there. He ignored a man trying to catch an elevator instead of holding the door. He even sat in the priority seats on public transportation. None of those things seemed serious to anyone else. But to Gaon, they were unforgivable. Meanwhile, the sword is less concerned about morality and more concerned that the overheated apartment is literally cooking it alive. Starving, Gaon checks his refrigerator only to find it completely empty. With no other choice, he heads to a supermarket using his remaining government assistance benefits. He happily finds discounted meat, but the familiar nightmare starts all over again. Customers panic the moment they notice the sword. Security quickly rushes over and politely tells him that even hunters should not be carrying weapons around the store. At the checkout, the cashier notices he is paying with a government assistance card instead of a hunter's license and immediately begins lecturing him about proper public etiquette. Gaon quietly survives the awkward conversation, pays for his groceries, and escapes before anyone can ask more questions. Back home, he collapses onto his bed and finally realizes something. People only assume he is dangerous because he looks like a hunter. If he actually became one, nobody would question the sword anymore. Curious, he searches everything about hunters online. He learns that after the portals appeared, humanity formed several different organizations. Military forces defend civilization. Secret government task forces eliminate hidden threats. And licensed civilian hunters explore portals, defeat monsters, and earn incredible amounts of money. That last part immediately catches Gaon's attention. A career where carrying a giant sword is completely normal, and it pays extremely well. Suddenly, Hukryo starts shouting again, demanding blood and insisting they conquer the world. Gaon ignores the speech and quietly comes up with an experiment. If the sword only needs blood, maybe it can survive on something similar. He carries Hukryo into the bathroom. The sword gets excited, convinced it is finally about to enjoy a glorious feast of fresh human blood. Instead, Gaon relieves himself directly onto the blade. The sword happily drinks every drop without questioning anything. It even compliments the unique flavor, mentioning it tastes surprisingly salty. Keeping a completely straight face, Gaon blames modern eating habits. The sword also complains about the smell. Gaon casually blames cholesterol. After cleaning the blade with running water, Gaon quietly concludes that since urine is filtered from blood, the cursed sword clearly does not require actual human blood to survive. Monster blood should work just as well. Only then does Hukryo begin putting the pieces together. It slowly asks where that mysterious liquid actually came from. Gaon jokingly claims he defeated a handsome young man. The sword immediately calls him a terrible liar. There is no way someone who cried over littering would suddenly start killing people. Realizing something is very wrong, Hukryo finally understands what it just drank. The sword completely loses its mind. Gaon, meanwhile, calmly folds his hands together and tells the ancient Buddhist story of Master Wan. The monk once drank delicious water from a bowl during the night. The next morning, he discovered the bowl was actually a human skull. Nothing about the water had changed. Only his perception had. Using that story, Gaon explains that everything depends on perspective. If blood and urine are both simply fluids from the human body, then from a certain philosophical viewpoint, they are not all that different. The cursed sword sits completely speechless. For perhaps the first time in its existence, it has been mentally defeated. The next morning, Hukryo is still crying in humiliation. Completely tired of listening to its non-stop complaints, Gawan finally makes a promise. If the sword wants real blood so badly, then he will become a licensed hunter and feed it with monsters instead. The next morning, Gaon finally decides it is time to become a real hunter. Meanwhile, inside a dark portal, the situation is already a complete nightmare. An injured hunter desperately hides behind a massive tree, barely able to breathe. Bodies are scattered all across the forest, turning the battlefield into a massacre. Their mission has gone horribly wrong, and whatever wiped out an entire squad is still lurking nearby. Then, a long black claw slowly grips the rock beside him. A twisted silhouette appears behind the terrified hunter, wearing an eerie smile. His scream echoes through the entire forest. Back in the city, completely unaware of that nightmare, Gaon arrives at the Hunter Association to officially register as a hunter. He nervously walks to the reception desk and asks to sign up. To his surprise, the entire process takes only a few minutes. No combat exam, no written test, no proving his strength. The employee simply hands him a temporary Tier 0 hunter license along with a welcome package. Gaon just stands there staring at the badge, wondering if becoming a hunter is really supposed to be this easy. The receptionist explains that as long as he completes at least one mission every week, he gets to keep his license. Miss too many assignments and it gets revoked. Simple enough. Even Hukryo sounds disappointed. The sword was hoping for an entrance exam where it could humiliate everyone. Instead, Gaon opens the Hunter Association app on his phone and starts browsing available jobs. Most missions look complicated. Then one catches his eye. A simple investigation and sample collection inside a low-risk portal. Reward: 1,000,001. The moment he sees that number, his eyes practically turn into dollar signs. Without thinking twice, he accepts the mission. Not long afterward, he arrives at the restricted area where a glowing purple portal stands behind military barricades. Veteran hunters are already gathering before entering. Gaon quietly joins the crowd and immediately notices something strange. Almost everyone is carrying assault rifles. Very few people use swords anymore. Several bulky hunters glance at his weapon before laughing, joking that he looks like someone straight out of an old fantasy novel. One friendly veteran walks over and asks if this is his first mission. He admits that seeing someone fight with only a sword reminds him of his younger days before modern firearms became standard equipment. Before the conversation can continue, a female examiner wearing glasses calls everyone over. Every hunter must undergo a mandatory Karma Index inspection before entering the portal. The first volunteer fails immediately. His karma level is too high after returning from vacation. The veteran quietly explains that every mission increases a hunter's karma. If the value exceeds 5,000, the risk of corruption becomes too dangerous, preventing them from entering portals. Another experienced hunter passes with a value under 3,000, earning praise for his incredible purification talent. Curious, Gaon asks how the system works. The veteran explains that lower numbers indicate better natural resistance. An initial score around 800 is already considered exceptional. One famous hunter even started at 780. Gaon starts feeling a little nervous. Eventually, his name is called. The examiner points the scanner toward his forehead. A second later, her eyes nearly pop out of her head. She stares at the display in complete disbelief. Then she accidentally announces his karma index, 58,000. Every hunter instantly draws their weapons. People begin screaming that Gaon has already been completely corrupted. Poor Gaon has absolutely no idea what is happening. He immediately raises both hands and desperately looks toward the friendly veteran for help. Just as the situation is about to explode, the examiner suddenly realizes she read the decimal point wrong, his actual karma index, 0.5. The entire group goes silent. Nobody has ever seen a number that low. Embarrassed, the examiner apologizes while everyone slowly lowers their weapons. The hunters eventually pass through the portal and enter a gloomy forest covered in thick mist. Wearing protective gas masks, they begin collecting samples from the surrounding vegetation. Meanwhile, Hukryo quietly whispers the only thing it ever talks about: blood. The veteran eventually suggests everyone take a short break after collecting almost nothing but worthless weeds. Laughing, he jokes that someone with a karma level of 0.5 probably does not even need to rest. Then everything suddenly changes. One hunter begins coughing violently. Dark energy starts leaking from his body while his eyes turn blood red. The group immediately recognizes the symptoms. Mystical corruption. Without hesitation, the hunter injects himself with morphine. After a few tense moments, his breathing stabilizes. He insists he is fine, but the veteran quietly warns Gaon to always watch both his karma level and his gas mask filter. Inside a portal, even experienced hunters can lose control at any moment, before anyone can relax. Rustling bushes nearby grab everyone's attention. Another hunter named Park returns from scouting. Instead of bringing good news, he announces that he discovered a goblin camp, exactly the kind of place they were ordered to avoid. Almost on cue, a furious goblin charges out swinging a crude stone axe. The hunters immediately open fire. Gunshots echo across the forest as the monsters are cut down one after another. Several goblins suddenly leap toward Park from behind. He simply smirks. The magical ring on his finger glows bright red as he activates an acceleration skill. In the blink of an eye, every goblin surrounding him is already dead. He casually calls them slow. Watching the fight, Gon realizes there is barely any room for him to join in. Then, Hukryo suddenly senses fresh blood nearby. Following the sword's warning, Gon looks towards several straw huts. Before he can react, a goblin jumps down from a tree and swings a wooden club straight at him. Hukryo fully expects its overly kind master to hesitate. Instead, Gaon draws the sword in one smooth motion and slices the goblin clean in half. The sword is stunned. It honestly thought he would refuse to fight. Gaon simply remembers something the orphanage director once told him: never use violence against people. As a child, he innocently asked whether monsters counted as people. The director smiled, gave him a thumbs up, and said no. Problem solved. As the goblin dies, Hukryo immediately absorbs its soul. Strange energy flows into Gaon's body. The sword proudly explains that ordinary hunters only absorb leftover magical energy. Real strength comes from devouring the soul itself. Nearby, another hunter begins cutting ears off the fallen goblins. Each ear is worth 50,000 won as proof of the kill. Suddenly, Gaon realizes monster hunting is an even better business than he imagined. After congratulating him on his very first goblin kill, Park suggests everyone search for the cursed relic hidden somewhere inside the camp before confronting the boss. Excited by the reward waiting for them, the squad advances deeper into the village. Eventually, they stop in front of the largest hut, decorated with rows of impaled skulls. The experienced hunters slowly push open the wooden doors. The moment Gaon looks inside, his heart nearly stops. Several bodies lie scattered across the floor. Standing in the center of the hut is a sinister goblin with bright red hair, glowing crimson eyes, and a staff made from human skulls. The overwhelming magical pressure pouring from its body leaves no room for doubt. They have just found the goblin shaman. The moment the goblin shaman notices the hunters, it lets out a deafening screech and raises its skull staff high into the air. It is clearly preparing a powerful spell. Then, bang! A single rifle shot pierces its forehead before it can even cast anything. The shaman drops lifelessly onto the floor. Everyone stares for a second before the soldier sheepishly admits he only fired because the monster scared him. Park simply laughs and praises his reflexes. With the danger gone, one of the hunters quickly removes the purple ring from the shaman's finger. Judging by its appearance, it could sell for a fortune, assuming it is not cursed. Curious, Gaon asks to examine it. The hunter hands it over but immediately warns him. Whatever he does, do not put it on. The instant the ring reaches Gaon's hand, Hukryo starts screaming inside his head. Do not wear it. Ignoring both warnings, Gaon casually slips the ring onto his finger. A strange grin spreads across his face as he quietly calls it his precious. Instantly, his consciousness is pulled into a strange rainbow-colored mental world. A mysterious spirit appears before him and offers exactly what every cursed artifact always promises: unlimited power. Gaon calmly replies that he is not interested. The spirit insists it can grant absolutely any wish. After thinking for a moment, Gaon asks for a beef burger combo. The entity freezes. Apparently, nobody has ever answered that before. Completely flustered, it hurriedly claims that yes, it can absolutely provide burgers. There is just one condition. As payment, Gaon must sacrifice 3 human companions. Gaon silently turns around and starts walking away. Conversation over. Back in reality, everyone nervously points their weapons at him, convinced he has already been possessed. Instead, Gaon quietly removes the ring and hands it back as if nothing happened. Before anyone can question him further, they notice something far more disturbing. The veteran hunter, Tai Jin, is surrounded by thick purple smoke. His eyes have turned completely black. The team immediately realizes something is horribly wrong and decides to leave the hut before things get worse. Tai Jin weakly insists he is fine. He claims he only needs to replace his gas mask filter. Park slowly raises his rifle. He says there is a much easier solution. Before anyone can react, Hukryo suddenly screams at Gaon. Dodge! Without warning, Park opens fire on his own teammates. Bullets tear through the hut as he mercilessly betrays everyone. His goal is simple: leave absolutely no witnesses alive. Gaon barely manages to dive behind the building as bullets rip through the air where his head was moments earlier. Even Park looks surprised that the rookie escaped. Trying to catch his breath, Gaon realizes his gas mask filter has been completely destroyed. He tears off the broken mask and demands to know why Park just murdered his own allies. Park answers without the slightest hint of guilt. Splitting the rewards 5 ways is stupid. Keeping everything for himself is much better. Gaon reminds him that the Hunter Association will investigate. Park simply laughs. If everyone dies inside the portal, nobody will ever know what happened. The traitor rounds the corner with his rifle already raised and unleashes another barrage of bullets. Gaon desperately slides across the dirt, barely avoiding the gunfire before sprinting around the wooden hut. Park calmly reloads while mocking him. How long can he keep running? Then something unexpected flies around the corner. Gaon's sword. The spinning blade races through the air like a deadly boomerang. Park ducks beneath it and bursts into laughter. According to him, throwing away your only weapon is the dumbest thing anyone could possibly do. Confident that the rookie has disarmed himself, he charges forward. Then his smile disappears. Gaon is already standing beside him. The sword has somehow returned to its owner's hand. Glowing with a deep crimson light, Hukryo slices once. Park's rifle is instantly cut clean in half. The traitor is left holding nothing but useless scrap metal. For the first time since the betrayal, fear fills his face. Meanwhile, Gaon slowly raises the sword while wearing the exact same innocent smile he always has. Somehow, that smile is now even scarier than the weapon. Laughing almost cheerfully, he rushes toward Park. Terrified, the traitor immediately turns and runs for his life. Gaon catches him with a slash across the back before casually commenting that wounds on a warrior's back are the greatest shame. Completely panicked, Park activates the acceleration magic stored inside his ring and explodes through the forest at incredible speed. Gaon chases after him without slowing down. Still smiling, he shouts that he is not planning to kill him. He only wants one of his arms. Park nearly has a heart attack. Now he is the one screaming that the rookie is a complete psychopath. He sprints through the forest as fast as he possibly can before finally hiding behind a massive tree. Gasping for breath, he convinces himself he finally escaped. Then another thought crosses his mind: the Goblin Shaman's ring. He abandoned a priceless magical artifact back at the camp. Greed immediately overpowers common sense. Deciding the treasure is worth the risk, Park prepares to head back. A calm voice suddenly comes from directly behind him. He slowly turns. Gaon is already standing there. The terrified hunter bolts again while Gaon casually swings his sword just inches behind him. Park gives up on fighting and desperately searches for the portal exit. Then he notices something lying in the grass. An assault rifle. One of the dead hunters dropped it earlier. Laughing hysterically, Park throws himself toward the weapon. Finally, now he has a chance. But the moment he reaches it, he looks up. Someone is already standing in front of him. It is the veteran hunter Kim. Except, he is no longer human. Dark energy completely engulfs his body. One mutated arm has transformed into a monstrous claw, while violent purple light burns inside his eyes beneath the cracked mask. Without a single word, the corrupted hunter slams Park into the ground with overwhelming force. Watching everything unfold from a distance, Gaon can only stare in stunned silence. The creature lets out a terrifying roar as thick waves of dark energy spread through the entire forest. The corrupted hunter lets out a monstrous roar while standing triumphantly over Park's broken body. Watching from a distance, Gaon tightens his grip on Hukryo and immediately searches for a way out. Charging in head first would be suicide. He quickly dashes behind one of the remaining wooden huts and uses it as cover. Trying to understand what just happened, he asks Hukryo why their teammate transformed so quickly. The sword calmly explains that the corruption only accelerated because the hunter accepted the goblin shaman's cursed ring while standing on the brink of death. Everything suddenly clicks. Gaon remembers the ring's contract. It demanded 3 human sacrifices. Horrified, he realizes the other hunters were never just innocent victims. Their lives became the price that activated the ring's power. Before he can think any further, the corrupted monster clutches its head and unleashes another earth-shaking roar. The beast slams both fists into the ground. The impact tears apart the battlefield, sending shockwaves and debris flying across the entire clearing. Gaon instinctively suggests running away. Hukryo immediately shuts that idea down. The monster is far too fast. Escape is impossible. Gaon desperately asks if the sword has any better strategy. Hukryo confidently replies, "Fight until you die like a true warrior." That spectacularly unhelpful advice leaves Gaon completely speechless. The monster smashes another wooden hut into splinters with a single swing. Gaon barely dives away before the collapsing structure crushes him. Hidden behind a tree, he watches the creature sniffing the air like a predator searching for prey. Then, an idea suddenly pops into his head. If Hukryo grows stronger by drinking blood, why not feed it? Gaon stabs the sword into the corpse of a dead goblin. A small amount of energy flows into the blade. Not enough. Hukryo explains that blood from monsters someone else killed provides only a tiny fraction of its normal power. Nothing comes for free. Ignoring the complaint, Gaon keeps stabbing the blade into every goblin corpse nearby while the monster continues searching for him. Finally, he asks if the accumulated blood is enough. The crimson gem embedded inside Hukryo glows brightly. It is ready. The corrupted hunter suddenly roars nearby. Gaon grips the sword and prepares himself. Then he bursts out from behind the tree. Hukryo jokingly comments that at least his master will manage to land one hit before dying. Gaon immediately protests that dying is still part of that plan. While sprinting forward, he remembers something important. Hukryo mentioned earlier that newly corrupted hosts never receive the full power of a cursed artifact immediately. That means the monster has not reached its true strength yet. Seeing his opportunity, Gaon suddenly throws Hukryo directly at the creature. The monster instinctively turns toward the flying sword. Hukryo starts yelling in outrage after realizing it has been used as bait. Meanwhile, Gaon does not stop running. He has a completely different destination. Earlier, the hunters piled every goblin corpse together after collecting their rewards. That mountain of bodies is exactly what he is aiming for. The sword automatically flies back into his hand. The instant it returns, Gaon leaps onto the massive pile and drives Hukryo deep into the mountain of goblin corpses. Drink. Every last drop. The cursed blade begins absorbing an overwhelming amount of blood and energy all at once. The pile rapidly loses its color as every corpse is completely drained. Gaon keeps urging the sword to hurry before joking that it is going to give itself indigestion. Unfortunately, the corrupted hunter finally catches his scent. Roaring like a wild beast, it charges toward him on all fours with terrifying speed. Gaon realizes time has run out. The monster launches itself toward the pile. Forced to retreat, Gaon complains that Hukryo still is not finished feeding. While running for his life, he suddenly comes up with one last desperate plan. He points into the distance and loudly shouts, "Look over there." The monster completely ignores the oldest distraction in history and keeps charging straight at him. To make things worse, Gaon cannot simply abandon Hukryo. Once the sword moves more than a few meters away, it automatically returns to him. As the monster raises its claws for the killing blow, Gaon calls out to his weapon. At that exact moment, Hukryo erupts with crimson light. The blade has finally absorbed enough power. Gaon's expression completely changes. His fear disappears. Now, it is his turn. He slides directly underneath the monster's attack, narrowly avoiding its claws. Perfect. The sword tears itself free from the pile of corpses and rockets through the air, surrounded by blazing red energy. Gaon catches it the instant it reaches him. The overwhelming power flowing through the blade causes a confident smile to spread across his face. The monster roars and charges again. Hukryo orders him to strike with everything he has. Gaon swings with both hands. A massive slash tears straight through the creature's chest, opening a deep wound as blood explodes into the air. The beast screams in agony. The cursed energy burning inside the wound gives it no chance to recover. Hukryo immediately shouts for the finishing blow. Without hesitation, Gaon lunges forward. The blade pierces straight through the monster's heart. He twists the sword deep inside its chest, making absolutely sure there is no chance of survival. The corrupted hunter collapses onto the ground. Finally defeated, Gaon immediately orders Hukryo to devour everything. The cursed sword greedily absorbs every remaining drop of blood, magical energy, and soul from the fallen creature. As the corruption is drained away, the monstrous appearance slowly disappears. Dark claws shrink back into human hands. The terrifying aura fades. The face of veteran hunter Kim finally returns. He lets out a weak breath, barely conscious. Elsewhere, alarms suddenly begin echoing through a heavily guarded government security facility. An employee sprints through the corridors and urgently reports to the chief that storage facility number 6 has been breached. The irritated chief demands an explanation. The employee reveals that one of the sealed cursed artifacts successfully possessed a staff member, even locked away inside maximum security. The artifact still found a victim. Another worker complains that there is no more room to safely contain cursed objects. The storage facility is already overflowing. As Chief Kim arrives, several team leaders quickly gather around him to report the situation. One exhausted employee sarcastically mutters that they seriously need some kind of giant dumpster where they can just throw every cursed artifact away forever. The comment makes Park Do-kyung suddenly fall silent. Instead of laughing, he actually starts considering whether a special disposal site for cursed artifacts might be possible. Back inside the portal, Gaon quietly picks up the goblin shaman's cursed ring and lets out a long sigh of relief. Looking at the unconscious Kim lying nearby, he can only hope that this nightmare is finally over. Following the mission, Gaon is brought back to the Hunter Association for another round of questioning. Inside the interrogation room, Park Do-kyung checks his karma index once again. The result leaves even him impressed. Only a short while ago, Gaon's karma had climbed above 6,000. Now, it has dropped all the way to 1,865. Do-kyung quietly points out that Gaon rejected the goblin shaman's cursed contract, defeated a corrupted hunter, and somehow purified him afterward. None of that should have been possible. After a long silence, the chief finally looks Gaon straight in the eyes. Then he makes the strangest job offer imaginable. Would you like to become the association's official dumpster? Gaon stares at him in complete disbelief. Seeing the horrified look on the boy's face, Do-kyung immediately clears his throat and corrects himself. Officially, storage facility number 7. That honestly does not sound much better. The chief explains that reversing corruption is something humanity has never accomplished before. Normally, anyone who repeatedly handles cursed artifacts eventually becomes corrupted themselves. Gaon is different. Every cursed item he absorbs simply gets digested. Even after constantly carrying Hukryo, his karma remains unbelievably stable. After countless examinations, the association has reached only one possible conclusion. Gaon possesses something thought to be impossible: complete immunity to mystical corruption. If that ability is real, it could save countless lives, maybe even the entire country. Curious now, Gaon asks what becoming a living storage facility would actually involve. Do-kyung explains that maintaining secure containment vaults for cursed artifacts costs the government enormous amounts of money every month. Instead, They want Gaon to safely store those artifacts himself. As compensation, he would receive 5 million won for every single cursed item. Gaon's eyes almost pop out of his head. Forget saving the country, his brain immediately starts calculating just how many burgers 5 million won can buy. Trying very hard not to look too excited, he politely asks for a week to think about the offer. Do Kyun agrees. 1 week should be enough. Elsewhere, inside the director's office, General Director Oh Gong-tai slams both hands onto his desk. He simply cannot believe the reports. A hunter whose karma exceeded 6,000 somehow dropped close to 2,000 within hours. Du Kyung calmly assures him every measurement has already been verified. The director quietly reflects on the past. Ever since portals connected Earth to the Dark Zone over 10 years ago, humanity gained countless new resources. Unfortunately, cursed artifacts appeared just as quickly. Now the country is overflowing with dangerous magical objects that require constant supervision. Someone capable of safely neutralizing their corruption would completely change everything. Du Kyung explains that he wants to begin official testing immediately using trusted members of his own team. The director immediately approves the project. With the association's general commander currently absent, he grants Du Kyung full authority to proceed. 4 days later, Gaon returns to the association. Walking beside Du Kyung through the building, he casually mentions that he spent the last few days completing several simple missions. Then he drops another surprise. He has awakened mana. Du Kyung stops walking for a second. Apparently, digesting Hukryo's corruption awakened magical power inside Gon. That is definitely not supposed to happen. Inside the elevator, Gon asks about veteran Kim, the hunter he managed to save. Du Kyung smiles. Kim recovered successfully. His severed arm was even reattached through surgery. The elevator doors slide open. Waiting outside is an entire escort of armed soldiers and elite agents. Gaon immediately starts feeling nervous. A cheerful middle-aged man walks over and introduces himself as Kim Jong-ho, the chief of the association's quarantine division. After greeting everyone, he leads the group through several heavily secured hallways before stopping beside a military jeep. The vehicle carries them deep underground into storage facility number 6. The underground warehouse is enormous. Rows upon rows of gigantic shelves stretch into the distance. Gaon looks around in complete amazement, wondering why the storage area needs to be so massive. Jong-ho explains that cursed artifacts cannot be stored too close together. If their energies resonate with each other, a chain reaction could occur. As they continue deeper inside, Gaon's attention is suddenly caught by several gigantic concrete blocks. Confused, he asks whether they actually buried cursed artifacts inside solid concrete. The guide nods. The concrete exists to make sure absolutely nobody accidentally opens the containment vault hidden inside. Eventually, Jong-ho announces that it is time for the practical evaluation. He points toward one of the concrete blocks containing several low-tier cursed artifacts. Du Kyung and Chunhua immediately begin breaking apart the concrete with heavy tools, while Jong-ho explains that the truly dangerous artifacts are stored much farther inside the facility. Then, something feels wrong. The guide suddenly notices complete silence behind him. He slowly turns around. Gaon is gone. A second later, the engine of the military jeep roars to life. Jong-ho barely manages to dive out of the way as the vehicle speeds past him at full throttle. Dust fills the air while everyone watches in complete disbelief. Gaon is driving straight toward the deepest part of the warehouse, toward the high-tier cursed artifacts. From the darkness ahead, countless malicious whispers begin echoing through the underground facility, calling him, inviting him closer. Instead of slowing down, Gaon presses the accelerator even harder. A wide, almost manic smile spreads across his face as greed lights up his eyes. The cursed artifacts are calling to him.